The alarm horns erupt from temple spires just as Nara finishes broadcasting the truth. Warriors flood the central pavilion, led by an enraged High Priest Zarek. She thought the human would devour her, but instead, Trey modified their transmitter to spread dissent across Croatian settlements. Now they're fleeing into the forest with encrypted components, a cryptic message arriving from an ally. It begins, "Daughter of Kaum, the archives hold the truth you seek. What they uncover will shatter everything they thought they knew about their world." The valley slept under a blanket of priestly lies until Nara's voice cut through the static. Her hand tightened on the transmitter switch, the device warming under her palm. She spoke the forbidden histories into the microphone, each word a weapon against generations of control. The message traveled through relay points Trey had established, bouncing from hidden transceivers to public channels. Warriors flooded the central pavilion within moments. Their armored boots echoed on stone as alarm horns sounded from every temple spire. Zarek's rage became a physical force moving through the settlement, his commands crackling through comms devices. They expected silence from the populace. They received a truth that moved faster than their soldiers could deploy. Nara's fear of the human beside her warred with the necessity of his technology. Her knife remained close at hand, but his modifications had made the broadcast possible. The transmitter components felt heavy in her pack, each metallic piece evidence of their crime against the priest caste. She watched his calm efficiency as he monitored their escape route, his alien features unreadable in the dim light. Their signal spread through homes and workshops, finding both fear and hope among the listeners. In the metalworkers' district, a father lowered his hammer to listen. In the agricultural sectors, farmers paused their irrigation work. The words reached merchants closing their stalls and children doing homework. Some shut off their receivers immediately. Others leaned closer, their hearts beating faster. They had lit the fuse. Now they ran from the explosion. Nara followed Trey into the forest's edge, the undergrowth tearing at her clothes. The human moved with unexpected grace through the dense vegetation, his modified scanner clearing a path. Behind them, the settlement descended into controlled chaos as temple guards began door-to-door searches. The forest swallowed them just as the first encrypted message arrived. Trey's device chimed softly, a green light blinking in the gathering darkness. He handed it to Nara without speaking, his eyes scanning the trees behind them. The message header showed Kelvar's encryption signature, bypassing all priest caste monitoring systems. She opened it standing there in the shadows, breath still coming hard from their run. The text began with a childhood name she hadn't heard spoken in years, followed by coordinates and a time window. It spoke of archives that weren't what she'd been taught, of truths that could break the priest caste's power completely. The message redefined their mission from simple dissent to something deeper, more dangerous. They weren't just opposing lies anymore. They were being drawn toward discovery. Nara looked from the device to Trey's waiting face, then back toward the settlement lights. The weight of the transmitter components seemed to increase in her pack. She understood now that their crime had only been the beginning. The real violation of temple law awaited them in those archives, whatever they truly contained. The message arrived as they caught their breath beneath the twisted black trees. Kelvar's encrypted signal bypassed all priest caste monitoring systems, a feat that should have been impossible. His words offered both salvation and deeper danger in equal measure. The device glowed softly in Nara's hands, its light catching the tension around her eyes. Daughter of Kaum. The name hit her like a physical blow. She hadn't heard that title spoken since her mother's disappearance years ago. It was a name from another life, before the temple's control tightened around her world. Kelvar used it like a key, unlocking something deep in her memory. The message continued, each word carefully measured for maximum impact. The archives weren't what she'd been taught. According to Kelvar, they contained more than just scrolls and historical records. They held artifacts that contradicted the official temple narrative. Kelvar spoke of truths that could break the priest caste's power completely, things that would make their broadcast seem like child's play. But accessing those truths meant entering the temple's most secured areas, places guarded by both technology and tradition. Nara realized this wasn't just rebellion anymore. It was archaeology. They would need to uncover what had been buried, both physically and historically. The mission shifted in her mind from opposition to excavation. They would need tools beyond transmitters and courage. They would require precision, patience, and a willingness to dig through layers of deception. The message contained specific coordinates and access codes that Kelver had risked everything to obtain. He described security systems that changed patterns every 6 hours, temple guards who never walked the same route twice, and archival chambers protected by biometric scanners. Each detail added weight to their task, each security measure another obstacle to overcome. Trey watched her read, his human features unreadable in the forest shadows. He seemed to understand the shift in their mission without needing explanation. His hands moved to check their equipment, assessing what tools they might need for archaeological work rather than broadcasting. The transmitter components took on new significance. They might need to modify them for different purposes entirely. Nara folded the device closed, the message burning in her memory. They now sought not just to oppose lies but to uncover what was buried. The forest around them felt suddenly larger, the darkness holding more secrets than just their hiding place. Somewhere in the temple's heart, waiting beneath stone and ceremony, lay the evidence that could change everything. She looked from Trey to the distant temple spires visible through the trees. The human had proven unexpectedly capable with technology. Now they would need those skills for something far more delicate than broadcasting. They would need to extract truth from the most protected place on their world, using both alien technology and Croatian knowledge. The message had redefined everything, no longer just voices in the night. They would become hands in the darkness, uncovering what the priest had worked generations to conceal. Trey worked while Nara watched, her knife still close at hand. She expected him to be a burden in their flight through the forest, a liability she would need to protect. Instead, he adapted their equipment with quiet efficiency that contradicted all her expectations. His hands moved with precision she'd never seen in Croatian techs, each motion economical and sure. He took their bulky transmitter and began modifying it with spare parts from his own kit. Small tools appeared from pockets she hadn't noticed, each designed for specific tasks. He reconfigured the power source to draw less energy while maintaining range, reducing their thermal signature. Then he added a frequency-hopping algorithm that would make their transmissions nearly impossible to trace back to their location. Each adjustment showed knowledge beyond their world's understanding. He calibrated instruments using methods that seemed intuitive rather than learned, making tiny corrections that improved performance by margins Croatian engineers would consider impossible. The device began humming at a different pitch, lower and softer, barely audible even in the forest's silence. Nara's prejudice fought against the evidence of his usefulness. She had been taught that humans were destructive, that they consumed resources without thought for consequences. Yet here was one building, protecting, improving. He didn't devour their equipment's capabilities, he enhanced them. He didn't waste power, he optimized it. He didn't create vulnerabilities, he closed them. He noticed her watching and handed her the modified device. It felt lighter in her hands, better balanced. The casing showed no visible changes, yet she could feel the difference in its operation. The display now showed multiple security overlays, indicating when nearby scans were active and what frequencies they used. It could even suggest alternative transmission windows when surveillance was momentarily distracted. Her fear began its slow transformation into reliance. She found herself watching his hands instead of his unfamiliar features, noticing how they never hesitated, never made unnecessary movements. When he adjusted their scanner to detect temple security patrols at greater distances, she didn't question the modification. When he recalibrated their environmental suits to better blend with the forest's thermal profile, she simply nodded acceptance. The human became their greatest technological advantage in ways she couldn't have predicted. He could interface with Croatian systems using adapters he built from spare parts, accessing data streams the priest considered secure. He found patterns in temple security rotations that even veteran rebels had missed, identifying predictable gaps in their coverage. She finally sheathed her knife fully for the first time since they'd met. The gesture felt more significant than she wanted to admit. Trey noticed but said nothing, his attention already on their next equipment modification. He was installing a secondary power cell to their scanner, something that would give them precious extra minutes of operation if they needed to go completely silent. They packed the equipment as darkness settled properly over the forest. Nara took the lighter pack without comment, the one containing their modified transmitter. Trey shouldered the heavier one with their supplies and backup gear. They moved out through the trees, their steps synchronized now, the human scanning ahead with equipment that saw things her eyes never could. Kelvar's daughter revealed herself in a safe house's dim light. The air smelled of damp stone and old insulation. Lisa carried her father's knowledge and her own courage in equal measure, her hand steady as she unrolled schematics on the worn table. She moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Her eyes holding the same intensity Nara remembered in Kelvar's gaze before his disappearance. She described archives that weren't scrolls but artifacts. The priests hadn't been preserving history. They'd been hiding technology. Human visitors had left behind tools of knowledge, not destruction. Lisa spoke of metallic shelves and humming consoles concealed beneath stone temples, of energy signatures that didn't match any Croatian power source. Her words painted a picture of sophisticated equipment maintained in perfect condition, generations after its creators had departed. This changed everything about their understanding of the past. The rebellion now had a tangible target beyond ideological opposition. Lisa provided detailed maps showing access points to the subterranean chambers, including maintenance ducts and ventilation shafts that bypassed the main temple security. She knew guard rotation schedules, biometric scanner locations, and which priests were most likely to look the other way for proper compensation. Her information was specific, tested, and dangerously current. The metallic shelves she described held devices that could read information from crystals unlike any found on their world. The humming consoles displayed symbols that matched some of the markings on Trey's equipment. Human visitors hadn't come to conquer or consume. They had left behind knowledge systems, communication devices, and medical technology that could have transformed Croatian society. Instead, the priest caste had buried these gifts beneath layers of stone and superstition. Lisa's revelation shifted their mission parameters completely. They weren't just fighting power anymore. They were fighting for truth. The mission became about physical recovery, not just revelation. They would need to extract actual devices from the archives, not merely document their existence. This required different equipment, different planning, different risks. Trey began modifying their scanners to detect the specific energy signatures Lisa described, his human technology suddenly making new sense in this context. The safe house felt smaller as they absorbed the implications. Dust motes danced in the light from their single glow lamp. Nara watched Lisa's hands trace routes on the temple blueprints, noticing how the young woman's fingers lingered on certain chambers. Some areas were marked with warnings about structural instability, others with notes about particularly vigilant guards. Each detail added weight to their task, each security measure another variable to account for. They would need to retrieve specific devices that Lisa identified as most critical. One could apparently interface with Croatian biological systems to treat the illness the priests claimed was a divine punishment. Another contained star charts that showed their world's actual place in the galaxy, not the isolated position the temple teachings described. Each artifact represented a truth that could undo generations of control. The rebellion's focus shifted from broadcasting messages to planned extraction. They would need containment fields for delicate equipment, transportation protocols for sensitive technology, and emergency measures in case they triggered hidden security systems. Trey's modifications took on new urgency as he adapted their gear for handling alien technology. His human origin suddenly seemed less like a liability and more like preparation for this specific moment. Nara felt the mission solidifying into something concrete and dangerous. They weren't just spreading ideas anymore. They would be removing physical evidence from the most secure location on their world. The risks multiplied with each piece of information Lisa provided, but so did the potential rewards. They could actually show people the truth instead of just telling them about it. They could place functioning technology in the hands of those who needed it most. The dim light seemed to intensify as they planned, shadows stretching across blueprints that showed the temple's hidden depths. Lisa's voice remained steady as she described what awaited them beneath the stone, her knowledge of the archives coming from years of careful observation and stolen access. She knew which artifacts were most likely to be missed immediately, which security systems had blind spots, and which priests could be distracted at crucial moments. They weren't just opposing a system anymore. They were preparing to dismantle it piece by piece, starting with the physical evidence that supported the lies. The mission had transformed from rebellion to recovery, from descent to redemption. They would return what had been stolen from their people, not just in concept but in concrete, functioning technology that could change everything. Dex spread maps across the worn table surface, his warrior's hands tracing potential routes with a soldier's practiced efficiency. The Northern Temple's deepest chamber represented their objective, a target protected by every security system Croatia could deploy. His fingers moved across the parchment, indicating choke points and guard stations with quick, precise gestures. The air in the safe house felt heavy with the weight of their planning, the maps showing a maze of obstacles between them and their goal. Lisa provided authentication codes from her temple training, reciting sequences she'd memorized during her forced education. Her voice remained steady as she listed access protocols and security overrides, each code representing a potential doorway through the temple's defenses. She knew which priests maintained strict watch and which could be distracted, which systems received regular maintenance and which had known vulnerabilities. Her knowledge covered shift changes, maintenance schedules, and even the personal habits of key security personnel. Trey adapted their devices to counter surveillance and bypass cryptography. His human-made tools interfaced with Croatian systems in ways the temple architects never anticipated. He modified their scanners to detect energy fields at different frequencies, calibrated their comms to mimic temple security channels, and programmed evasion patterns into their movement trackers. Each adjustment made their infiltration slightly more possible, each modification another layer of protection against detection. Dex emphasized this was reconnaissance, not confrontation. His military background showed in the way he structured their approach, prioritizing observation over engagement. They would avoid contact whenever possible, using stealth rather than force to reach their objective. His plans included fallback positions, emergency extraction points, and multiple contingency routes should their primary path become compromised. The map showed not just their intended route, but every possible alternative should things go wrong. But they all knew any breach would trigger maximum response. The temple's security systems were designed to contain threats completely, sealing off sections and flooding them with guards at the first sign of intrusion. Their window for error measured in seconds, not minutes. Each of them understood that discovery would mean more than capture. It would mean losing any chance of revealing the truth they sought to uncover. The plan balanced technological cunning with old-fashioned stealth. Trey's devices would handle the electronic defenses, while Dex's experience would navigate the physical obstacles. Lisa's knowledge would provide the social engineering needed to bypass human elements of security. Nara would serve as their operative inside, using her understanding of temple protocols to blend when technology couldn't help them. Each team member brought essential skills to the operation, each weakness in one covered by strength in another. They had one narrow window before security tightened. A seasonal festival would draw half the temple guard to perimeter duties, creating temporary gaps in interior coverage. The celebration's noise would mask small sounds that might otherwise alert sensors. The time frame measured exactly 4 hours from the first ceremonial gong to the guard rotation, back to normal positions. Every step of their infiltration had to synchronize with this timetable. Their chance depended on perfect timing and absolute silence. They rehearsed movements in the safe house, practicing hand signals and emergency procedures until they could communicate without words. Each team member learned their role completely, understanding not just their own tasks but how they interconnected with others. They checked equipment repeatedly, testing every modification and backup system until they knew each device's capabilities and limitations. The maps remained spread across the table as they finalized their approach. Dex's finger traced their primary route one final time, his calloused skin catching on the parchment's rough surface. They would move under cover of festival noise, using crowd sounds to mask their progress. Trey's devices would create false sensor readings while Lisa's codes opened actual doors. Nara would provide the cultural knowledge needed to navigate temple spaces without attracting notice. Each of them understood the risks. Each accepted the consequences of failure. Their preparation complete, they began assembling gear for the infiltration. Weapons received final checks, communications gear underwent last-minute adjustments, and emergency supplies were distributed according to weight and necessity. The maps were folded away, their routes committed to memory rather than paper. They moved with the quiet efficiency of people who knew they might not return, each action measured against the stakes of their mission. The temple awaited, its secrets protected by layers of security and tradition, its truths hidden beneath stone and ceremony. The service corridor smelled of dust and old stone. Fine particles stirred with each step, catching in their throat and nose with every breath. Lisa led them through spaces only maintenance workers used, her movements sure in the dim light. Her familiarity with these passages showed in the way she avoided loose stones and knew which support beams would creak underfoot. The air felt close and still, undisturbed by the temple's normal circulation systems. Every shadow might contain a guard or detection system. Their scanners remained active but muted, tray monitoring multiple frequencies for any sign of surveillance. The stone wall showed marks from generations of maintenance carts, grooves worn deep by routine passage. Water stains marked where ancient leaks had been repaired, and faded symbols indicated utility access points. The space felt both ancient and functional, a hidden network supporting the temple's public face. They moved in single file, weapons held ready but not drawn. Dex took rear position, his attention divided between their back trail and the scanner readings. The corridor narrowed further ahead, forcing them to turn sideways in places where rock formations intruded on the man-made passage. Their equipment packs scraped against rough stone, the sound amplified in the confined space. She pressed a sequence on what appeared to be solid wall. Her fingers moved with practiced certainty across seemingly random imperfections in the stone surface. The pattern involved both pressure and specific timing, a combination that would defeat casual discovery. The wall showed no visible seams or mechanisms, its surface matching the surrounding corridor in every detail. Only someone with exact knowledge would recognize the hidden access point. Stone slid aside with a whisper, revealing a downward passage. The mechanism operated with surprising silence, its movement smooth and well-maintained despite apparent disuse. The opening revealed steps carved from the living rock, descending into darkness below temple foundations. Cool air rose from the opening, carrying a scent of ozone and something metallic. The steps showed wear at the centers, evidence of regular use despite their hidden nature. The air changed, cooler with the hum of active technology. Temperature dropped noticeably as they descended, the stone steps feeling colder under their boots. The humming vibration came through their feet first, then filled the air around them. Blue maintenance lighting activated automatically as they progressed downward, revealing a passage that transitioned from rough stone to finished walls. The technology sounded alive, active, and completely at odds with the temple's ancient exterior. They entered a space that contradicted all temple aesthetics. Gone were the carved religious symbols and traditional architectural elements. Instead, smooth metallic surfaces reflected the blue lighting, their finish flawless and sterile. The floor became non-slip composite material, the walls lined with conduits and access panels. Climate control maintained perfect humidity levels, protecting whatever lay ahead. The transition felt like moving between centuries, from ancient worship to advanced technology. Metallic shelves held devices that clearly weren't Croatian. Their designs featured clean lines and materials unknown to local manufacturing. Some units glowed with soft indicator lights. Others showed display screens with alien symbols. The shelving units themselves were adjustable and modular, designed for efficiency rather than ceremony. Each device appeared meticulously maintained, free of dust or corrosion despite apparent age. The arrangement suggested systematic organization rather than random storage. They stood in the heart of the forbidden knowledge. The scale of the space surprised them, extending further than their lights could reveal. Row upon row of shelving units disappeared into the distance, each holding technology that could transform their world. The air hummed with power from unseen generators, maintaining systems that had operated continuously for generations. Their scanner readings showed multiple energy signatures, all foreign to Croatian technology databases. The priest's greatest secret was now exposed to them. This was no historical archive of scrolls and artifacts. It was a functioning repository of advanced technology, carefully preserved and completely hidden from their people. Each device represented knowledge that could have alleviated suffering, improved lives, and connected their world to others. Instead, it had been locked away beneath stone and ceremony, protected by lies and enforced ignorance. They moved forward slowly, their lights playing over shelves that held the truth behind generations of deception. An ornate door blocked their progress at the chamber's end, marked with ancient script that glowed faintly in the dim light. The surface showed intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, the metal itself unfamiliar to their world's metallurgy. It stood as the final barrier between them and whatever the priest had deemed too dangerous for anyone to see. The door's mechanism showed no visible locks or handles, only patterns and symbols that defied immediate understanding. It demanded both technological and traditional access. Trey's scanners detected multiple security layers embedded within the door itself: energy fields, molecular sensors, and cryptographic locks that would challenge their equipment. At the same time, the ancient script suggested ceremonial knowledge would be required, the kind passed down through specific family lines or temple training. The dual nature of the security system showed careful planning, designed to prevent access by either pure technology or pure tradition alone. Failure here would trigger immediate alerts. Their scanners showed connections to temple security systems that would detect any attempted breach. The door served as more than just a physical barrier. It functioned as the chamber's primary alarm trigger. Any wrong approach would bring the entire temple guard down upon them within minutes, sealing their fate and ensuring the archives remained hidden. The stakes elevated with each moment they stood before the final obstacle. Lisa's translator device projected glyphs none of them recognized. The symbols that appeared above the door's surface matched no known Croatian writing system. Their shapes, angular and precise rather than flowing like traditional script. Her device struggled to interpret them, offering partial translations that made little sense in context. The language seemed mathematical in nature, based on principles their world hadn't developed independently. The failure of her technology confirmed the security required something beyond standard temple knowledge. Nara's pendant, her mother's legacy, fit a depression in the metal. The jewelry she'd worn since childhood settled into the indentation with perfect precision, its shape matching the depression exactly. The stone at its center began to glow, with the same soft light as the door's markings, activating systems that had lain dormant for generations. The connection felt personal, intimate, as if the door recognized something in her bloodline that couldn't be forged or stolen. Her mother's unknown legacy suddenly revealed its purpose. The human and the Croatian technology worked in concert. Trey synchronized his devices with the energy patterns emerging from Nara's pendant, adjusting frequencies to harmonize rather than force entry. His equipment bridged the gap between ancient design and modern capability, interpreting the door's requirements in terms his systems could process. Lisa provided the ceremonial knowledge needed to complete the sequence, reciting phrases her father had taught her in secret. Their combined efforts created a key that neither culture could have provided alone. The door slid open without sound, revealing the inner chamber. The mechanism operated with perfect silence, the massive weight moving aside with engineered precision that spoke of advanced craftsmanship. No grinding of stone or hiss of hydraulics accompanied its movement, only the faint hum of technology fulfilling its purpose. The opening revealed a space larger than they anticipated, its dimensions extending beyond what the outer door suggested. Air currents shifted as pressure equalized, carrying scents of preserved materials and active systems. Light glowed from within, illuminating artifacts arranged carefully. The illumination came from the artifacts themselves rather than external sources, each object emitting a soft radiance that revealed its form and function. The chamber contained items of obvious technological significance: consoles with active displays, storage units with transparent fronts showing intricate components, and communication devices that still showed power indicators. The arrangement suggested ongoing maintenance rather than simple storage, each artifact positioned for both preservation and potential use. Their collaboration had opened what neither could alone. The door's design had anticipated that only cooperation between their world's traditions and outside knowledge could achieve access. The system required both the inherited right represented by Nara's pendant and the technological understanding provided by Trey's equipment. Lisa's temple training completed the triad, providing the ceremonial context needed to interpret the door's demands. The security hadn't been designed to prevent access forever, but to ensure it happened only under specific conditions. The true archive awaited beyond the threshold. They stepped into the chamber together, their scanners immediately detecting multiple energy signatures that dwarfed anything they'd encountered before. The space felt alive with functioning technology, humming with power that had been maintained for generations. Artifacts lined walls and filled display cases, each more sophisticated than the last. Some showed clear human design influences. Others reflected technologies from species they couldn't identify. The scale of what had been hidden here surpassed their worst suspicions about priestly deception. They moved forward slowly, their lights joining the glow from the artifacts, each step taking them deeper into the heart of the deception that had shaped their world. Trey's data device revealed more than just human contact. It accessed deeper archives that showed multiple spacefaring species had visited their world across millennia. The records included sensor logs of different ship designs, biological compatibility studies for various species, and trade agreements written in languages no one could read anymore. Each new layer of data expanded their understanding of what had been stolen from their people. The device's display filled with records of diplomatic exchanges and cultural sharing that spanned centuries. Before the priests consolidated power, the archives recorded multiple spacefaring species beyond the humans. Sensor logs showed vessels with biological components, others with crystalline structures, some that seemed to be pure energy. Each visit followed established protocols, approaching slowly, requesting permission to land, offering gifts of knowledge or technology. The records showed careful first contact procedures that respected Croatian sovereignty and cultural norms. None of the visitors had shown aggression, though their capabilities clearly surpassed local technology. Croatia had been part of an interstellar exchange network. Trade routes had connected their world to others, bringing new ideas and technologies that improved lives. Agricultural systems showed foreign influence in crop rotation methods and soil enrichment techniques. Medical knowledge included treatments based on alien biology that still worked on Croatians. The exchanges had been mutual, with Croatian art and music apparently valued by other species. Their world hadn't been isolated until the priests made it so. The priests had systematically erased all evidence of contact. They destroyed records, buried technology, and rewrote historical accounts to remove any mention of other species. The process had taken generations, with each priestly administration adding new layers of deception. They'd even altered geological records to hide mining operations that supplied materials for interstellar trade. The systematic nature of the eradication showed careful planning across centuries, not random acts of censorship. They'd built power on isolation and manufactured ignorance. By cutting off external contact, the priests made themselves the sole source of knowledge and authority. They controlled what technology reached the people, what medical treatments were available, even what stories parents could tell children. The isolation allowed them to create crises only they could solve, threats only they could protect against. Their power depended on maintaining fear of the unknown and control of information. The scale of the deception spanned millennia, not generations. Records showed the rewriting of history began over 1,200 years earlier, accelerating whenever external contact threatened priestly control. Each century saw new methods of enforcement, first through military power, then through religious doctrine, finally through control of technology and information. The long-term pattern revealed patience and persistence beyond any individual lifetime, an institutional commitment to falsehood. Every crisis had been leveraged to increase control. Natural disasters became evidence of divine displeasure that required tighter temple oversight. Disease outbreaks justified restrictions on movement and communication. Economic struggles led to centralized control of resources. The priests didn't solve problems. They managed them to maintain dependence. Their leadership created perpetual emergencies that required perpetual obedience. The pattern showed meticulous long-term social engineering. They'd gradually changed language to remove words that described external contact. They'd altered education to emphasize obedience over curiosity. They'd structured society to reward conformity and punish questioning. The engineering affected everything from family structures to economic systems, all designed to maintain the illusion of isolation and the necessity of priestly control. The rebellion was fighting against centuries of lies. Their struggle wasn't against current leadership alone, but against an entrenched system that had shaped their entire civilization. Each truth they uncovered had been deliberately buried generations earlier. Each fact they revealed challenged not just authority, but fundamental understanding of their world's history and place in the universe. They weren't just changing government. They were rewriting history. The archives gave them the tools to reconstruct what had been erased, to restore connections that had been severed, to reclaim knowledge that had been stolen. Their mission expanded from removing corrupt leaders to rebuilding their society's understanding of itself. The weight of that task settled over them as they continued through the archives, each new revelation adding to the burden and purpose of their rebellion. Elder Saville entered with temple guards at his back, their armored boots silent on the chamber floor. His face showed none of the kindness they remembered from temple gatherings or private council sessions. The familiar warmth they'd known was gone, replaced by an expression as cold and polished as the archive walls around them. His eyes moved across their group without recognition, assessing them as threats rather than allies. The guards spread out behind him, weapons held ready but not yet aimed. The honored outsider returns to steal sacred knowledge. His voice carried through the chamber without raising, each word precise and cutting. The term honored outsider sounded like an accusation rather than a title. He stood with the posture of someone reclaiming what belonged to him, his robes arranged with ceremonial precision that emphasized his authority. The guards mirrored his stance, their movements coordinated through long practice. They positioned themselves to control sightlines and potential escape routes. His betrayal was both personal and profoundly symbolic. Saville had mentored half the rebels in their youth, had shared meals with their families, had offered blessings at their naming ceremonies. Now he stood as their adversary, his loyalty to the temple system outweighing any personal connections. The shift felt physical, like a door closing between past and present. His presence here in this most secret place confirmed he was no reluctant participant, but an active guardian of the lies. The old guard would preserve the lies at any cost. Saville's hands remained relaxed at his sides, but his eyes missed nothing. He watched Trey's equipment with particular interest, recognizing the foreign technology's potential threat to their control. The guards maintained perfect formation, their training evident in how they covered each other without verbal communication. They represented generations of enforced obedience, each warrior chosen for loyalty over curiosity. Zaruk's warriors moved to secure the chamber exits. Their armor showed the distinctive markings of the High Priest's personal guard, better equipped and more disciplined than regular temple soldiers. They took positions at each doorway, activating security fields that hummed to life across the thresholds. The blue energy barriers cast shifting patterns across the ancient technology, their light reflecting in the polished surfaces of hidden artifacts. Escape routes vanished one by one as systems the rebels didn't control sealed them inside. The rebels were trapped with the truth they'd uncovered. Nera's hand went to her pendant, the same one that had opened the door now feeling like a trap itself. Trey's equipment showed multiple security systems activating throughout the chamber, their readings indicating complete lockdown. Dex adjusted his grip on his weapon, his warrior's assessment clearly matching the scanner data. Lisa stood near her father's schematics, her knowledge of temple security now working against them. Saville's actions showed how deep the corruption reached. His presence here proved the highest levels of temple leadership knew about the archives and actively protected them. This wasn't about religious belief anymore. It was about maintaining power structures that benefited the few at the expense of the many. His calm demeanor suggested he'd done this before, that such betrayals were routine operations rather than extraordinary events. The system protected itself with ruthless efficiency. Even trusted allies could be part of the system. Saville had sponsored scholarship programs, advocated for medical reforms, and spoken against excessive security measures in public meetings. His progressive image had made him seem like a potential ally within the system. Now that image crumbled, revealing someone who would preserve the lies rather than risk change. The depth of his deception undermined their trust in every relationship they'd built within temple society. Their escape now seemed impossible. The chamber's security systems were designed to contain exactly what they represented: unauthorized access to truth. Trey's scanner showed energy fields strengthening at every exit, their power sources buried deep within temple foundations. The guards stood ready with weapons that could disable without killing, their training focused on capture and interrogation. Saville watched them with the patience of someone who had already won, his victory written in the sealed doors and armed guards surrounding them. The truth they carried had become their prison,